make sure I'm ready for this video real quick. Got my notes? Check. Pepsi? Check. Sunglasses? Check. Hat? Check. And yes, thick skin? Check. Let's go. Welcome to Golden Bluted, everybody. If you are a college football fan, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button because that's all we do here. Videos every single day. And when you get a chance, go check out our Patreon page. We have a lot of great perks over there. We call our Patreons the shot callers because they call the shots around here. Remember, $5 and up Patreons will get to decide the game that we're going to live stream in the regular season, and you'll get to watch with me, Golden Bluted. And our score prediction contest will be coming back. Every week I'll pick out a game, and my Patreons will pick the score, and whoever comes close to the score wins $20. And you can win as many times as you want. In case y'all didn't know, I really like college football. Like, it is my life. But the thing is, college football has become unrecognizable because of the NIL, the transfer portal, and conference realignment. But here's the thing, just like anything else, if you give the people small doses here and small doses there, they generally just get used to it. Before you know it, the original product looks nothing like it did before. Today I'm focusing on conference realignment, how the conferences look and how crazy this has gotten, and how the conferences should look if it actually made sense. So first we're going to go through the conferences, list out the teams, and then I'll point out what doesn't make sense about it. Here goes. First, the ACC. And this is going by the standings from last year if you're wondering why I'm listing the teams in the order that I'm listing them. In the ACC, we have Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson, Louisville, Florida State, Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt, the Canes of Miami, Virginia Tech, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, and Duke. There's 3 names on this list that really pop out that I'm like, I don't think that really fits in the ACC as far as geographically. The first one is Louisville. And to be honest with you, I would actually put Louisville in the SEC. I would stick them down there with their counterpart, Kentucky. It makes sense and it fits geographically in the SEC. Now, the next name that really pops out is Syracuse. Where would I put Syracuse? I would put Syracuse in the Big Ten. I think geographically they fit more in the Big Ten. Syracuse has a bigger fan base than you realize. It's actually the biggest fan base in the ACC right now if you don't count Notre Dame. Yeah, that shocked me. The last name that really pops out that I don't think belongs in the ACC is Boston College. And for Boston College, what conference would I put them in? I would actually just boot them down to a group of 5. They could either be in the MAC, Conference USA, or the Sun Belt. I don't care. But Boston College just does not stick out as a Power 5 team right now. Moving on to the new Big 12. So that means I'm not going to count Oklahoma and Texas. And I am going to count Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU. So here we go. The members of the new Big 12. Oklahoma State, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, West Virginia, TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas, Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU. Of course, there are 4 names in the new Big 12 that really just pops out and says, hey, they do not look right in the Big 12. The first name, of course, you already know I'm going to say it, West Virginia. And you already know which conference I would put them in, the ACC. Geographically, this makes perfect sense, and all their rivalries are in the ACC. Moving on from that, the next name that really pops out is UCF. I would put UCF in the ACC. The ACC already has Miami, and they already have Florida State. Makes sense to me, makes sense geographically. The next name that really pops out is Cincinnati. Yeah, Cincinnati. Where would I put Cincinnati? I would actually put Cincinnati in with their counterpart, Ohio State, in the Big Ten. I think Cincinnati would be a good fit in the Big Ten. It makes sense to me. Finally, the last name in the new Big 12 that just doesn't quite make sense, that's BYU. I would put BYU in the Pac-12. Utah's already in the Pac-12. I know the Pac-12 looks down on BYU because of religious affiliations, but I'm not talking about all that in this video. I'm talking about what makes sense geographically. BYU to the Pac-12. On to the Big Ten. Here you go. They have Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska, and Northwestern. 3 names pop out in the Big Ten, and I'm like, that doesn't look right. The first one is Maryland. I think Maryland should be in the ACC. Makes perfect sense, and they were in the ACC before they jumped ship to the Big Ten, and they're not having a lot of success in the Big Ten. Might be regretting that except for the money. But geographically, I think Maryland fits in the ACC the best. The next name that really pops out is Rutgers. What conference should I put Rutgers in? The ACC, right? Nope, I would just knock them down to the group of 5. I don't think they bring enough to the table to be considered a Power 5. Finally, the last name that really pops out in the Big Ten that just doesn't fit, Nebraska. And of course, I think Nebraska belongs in the Big 12. The Big 12 is a Midwest conference, should be a Midwest conference. Nebraska fits in perfectly. Next conference, Pac-12. Here's who they have. Oregon, Washington State, Cal, Washington, Stanford, Utah, Arizona State, UCLA, USC, Colorado, and Arizona. Really just one name pops out that I'm like, doesn't really fit in the Pac-12. And that's Colorado. I think Colorado, once again, belongs in the Big 12. They are a Midwest team, closer to the Midwest than they are the Pacific Coast. Colorado, you belong in the Big 12 geographically. Finally, the last conference, the SEC. Here are their members, including Texas and Oklahoma, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, South Carolina, Florida, Vanderbilt, Alabama, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Auburn, LSU, Texas, and Oklahoma. 4 names in the SEC really pop out where I'm like, I would put them in another conference. The first name that pops out, Missouri, and I would put them in the conference that they came from, the Big 12. They are a Midwest team. They belong in the Midwest, which is the Big 12, or should be the Big 12. This next name might surprise you, Florida. So as is, the ACC already has Miami and Florida State, and plus I've already put UCF in the ACC. So let's make Florida an ACC state. It makes sense, and it fits in with the moniker Atlantic Coast Conference. They're on the Atlantic Coast. I would put Florida in the ACC. The next team that really pops out, and excuse me, there's actually 5 names. I counted this wrong. But the next name is Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M belongs in the conference that they came from, the Big 12. Midwest team, Midwest conference, the Big 12. And of course, the last 2 names, you already know I'm going to say it because of the conference that they're coming from. I'm talking about Texas, Midwest team. They belong in the Midwest Conference. That's the Big 12. And also Oklahoma, Midwest team. They belong in the Midwest Conference, a.k.a. the Big 12. So having switched all the teams around, how would the conferences look in my reality? And no, I didn't bump Vanderbilt down to group of 5. I thought about it, and I probably should, but I kept Vanderbilt in the SEC. But after all the rearranging, depending on geography, here's how the Power 5 conferences would look under Golden Blue Dude system. Well, first up, the 2 group of 5 teams, Rutgers and Boston College. Don't care what conference you'd put them in. I would just make them group of 5 teams. But here's how the ACC would look. Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson, Florida State, Pitt, Miami, Virginia Tech, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Duke, West Virginia, Florida, Maryland, and UCF. That makes a ton of sense. That definitely looks like an ACC conference. It looks like an Atlantic Coast Conference. The next conference, how they will look under my system, the Big 12. Oklahoma State, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas, Houston, Missouri, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado. That is a good-looking conference. It makes sense. Everybody's bunched together in the Midwest. That's the Big 12 that I would have. Moving on to the Big 10. Here's what the Big 10 would look like under my scenario. Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, Cincinnati, and Syracuse. And Notre Dame. No, I didn't forget about you, Notre Dame fans. I would stick Notre Dame in the Big 10. I think that's where they belong. So basically, the Big 10 is the upper northeast, including Syracuse, that stretches from east to west, but not too far east to west. It still makes sense. The next conference, the SEC, it actually shrinks a little bit under my scenario. You have Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Auburn, LSU, Vanderbilt, and Louisville. Yes, I think Louisville would fit in perfectly with the SEC. Geographically, that would be my SEC. And finally, here's how the Pac-12 would look. You'd have Oregon, Washington State, Cal, Washington, Stanford, Utah, Arizona State, UCLA, USC, Arizona, and BYU. That makes a lot of sense to me geographically. That looks like the Pac-12 conference to me. But of course, we all know this would never happen. This is clearly hypothetical. So y'all let me know in the comments section, how would you have the Power 5 conferences? What teams would you have in what conferences? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.